Buongiorno and welcome to episode 9 of season 5 of the Filmmaker Film Watcher podcast. I'm filmmaker Richard Di Gregorio.
E io sono l'osservatore di film Greg Ralph.
Well, you know how bad I am at accents.
What is that?
That's Google Translate. But for the uninitiated such as myself, that just basically says, and I'm film watcher Greg Ralph.
Oh,
this should be a fun one.
This is a fun one. This is our Let's Get Italian episode.
Yes. Well, for you it might be Let's Be Italian.
Let's be Italian.
You had that heritage. For
That's
me,
right.
Let's try and get that ever a little bit closer to Italian.
So this episode we're talking about 3 Italian films here. So
Yes, with the subtitles on mostly.
And amazingly, we just had some dinner. We had some pasta.
My wife made us some spaghetti and her sauce.
That's
so
right. So
we've got full bellies. We're ready for this.
Very Italian.
No Chianti. Sorry about that.
Yeah, you forgot that. Yeah. So the first film we're going to be talking about is the 2015 film God Willing.
And then we're going to jump back in time a little bit.
Yep.
I don't know what that is in Italian.
Now, hang on a minute. For our listeners, it's not like way back in time. Something we can do anything from silent films to the 20s, the 30s,
1994. But some of our listeners may not have been born then. That's only, a generation ago.
That's right.
And did I actually say what it is? Il Postino.
And then the final film we're going to discuss is 1997's film Life is Beautiful, or La Vita è Bella.
Let's move quickly on, shall we? So, Ricardo. And now you know why I don't do accents. Why don't you tell us about our first film?
Okay, God Willing.
No. Tell us about the film.
God Willing.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Released in 2015 and directed by Edoardo Falcone, God Willing centers itself around Tommaso, Marco Giallini, a successful cardiac surgeon who is also an atheist, workaholic, and all-round Scrooge to his peers. When Tommaso's son Andrea, Enrico Attica, has something important to announce to his family, they all believe that he's gay, and Tommaso and the family are supportive of this. But when Andrea reveals that he wants to become a priest instead of staying in medical school, Tommaso acts like he's fine with it, but inside, he loses it. Tommaso believes that Andrea has been brainwashed by the charismatic Father Don Pietro, Alessandro Gassman, and he sets out to prove it. Tommaso goes undercover at a monastery where Andrea is on retreat, trying to find any dirt he can on the priest to show his son that he's not perfect. He befriends Father Don Pietro, and then they begin a friendship, and he starts to question his own beliefs, prompting him to be better to the people around him, his family, and his wife Carla, Laura Morante, who has fallen out of love with him. Look, this is a really heartwarming and very funny story. I think it's very well paced, with great music to match and really engaging. The human is often laugh out loud funny, especially when he has his friends fake being his family. His son-in-law Gianni, Edoardo Pesce, is particularly a standout here. He's hilarious. But Marco Giallini gives a particularly strong performance here as Tommaso, and Alessandro Gassman is also strong as Don Pietro. There's quite a few laughs, but through these laughs, there's also heart to this film. It's also about acceptance, tolerance, and reminds us that it is possible to find a common ground with people who have different beliefs than us. And it's also a film that reminds us that it's really important to be open-minded and to respect people's choices, even if we don't agree with them. Look, I really enjoyed this film. Greg?
You hadn't seen this before, had you?
No.
No, I had. I think I might have recommended it to you. And I was really tossing up between 2 films that both star Marco Giallini, which is this and another film that we'll have to do one day called Perfect Strangers. It's a very, very interesting film. But let's focus on this. I think you pretty much nailed it. The one thing you didn't describe perhaps about Tommaso at the start of the film is he's also very judgmental.
Yes, right.
So he's got an assistant, I don't know if she's a nurse or a doctor of some kind, who is constantly telling off about her weight, for example.
Yes, constantly.
And yet later on he compliments her on her changed hairstyle,
Well, you see the change in him there.
which then radiates out.
It does.
And one of the nice things about this story is that almost all the members of his household had their own journey.
Yes.
Now, I think the son who's going to become a priest, Andrea, not so much actually. He's less of a character than the rest of the family. And also, disappointingly, Xenia, the housekeeper, who is included as part of the family because she's been in the house for 20, 23 years or something. She's included in the big reveal that the son's going to come out of the closet when, in fact, he's stepping into a confessional, perhaps.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, that's right. Yes.
But and she pops up once or twice in the story, but then she's almost completely forgotten, which I think is a bit of a lost opportunity.
Not really. I think she was utilised as well as she could have. She was a bit of a comic relief, just on the side.
Yeah, she is, but it kind of stops. And then she's gone from the story entirely. But the journey of Tommaso, of his wife Carla, of the daughter Bianca, and
the daughter Bianca. I didn't mention Bianca.
Oh yes,
but she's wonderful actually.
She goes on this religious journey.
She does,
where she's because of her brother's new vocation, quite literally, and she realises that there's actually 4 Gospels. She thought it was just the one. So he said, I'll give you a copy of one to read. So he gives her the Gospel of St. Matthew. And you see her sitting out on this gorgeous balcony in central Rome.
It's central
with
Rome.
A drink or something. And she's reading all the really, really boring, because it opens up with X begat Y and Y begat Z and Z begat A. It's the whole, theologically important, as I understand it, genealogy leading up to Jesus.
Yeah.
But for the beginning of a story, and you can just see her sinking down and down and down in tedium.
Yes.
And yet you don't quite see the moment. Well, actually, maybe you do. But then she has this complete turnaround where she starts becoming very religious.
Yes.
And because the book's so boring, she watches Jesus of Nazareth, the
But
film.
don't tell me what happens at the end.
Her father comes and says, don't tell me how the story ends. And he's looking at her as though like... Because his opinion of her has been quite sharp as well. She does nothing. She's not bright and so on. And so the metanoia, to use what I think might be a theological term, of his attitude, Tommaso's attitude to all the family, even the son-in-law who starts out as being a bit of a doofus, basically.
Yes, that's right.
And as you say, he's a very funny character,
Really
particularly when he's trying to help. But there's a really... I think one of the emotional highlights of the film is when he embraces his daughter. Like she's told him off earlier and said, you never paid attention to me. You never thought I was bright.
Yeah, that's right.
You thought, my brother was the apple of your eye. And, I just, and there was this music that you tried to get me to listen to, none of which I actually recognised, but said, that was just too much for a small child. I really like, you might know who it was, some Italian singer, that moves me. He's kind of like, oh, yeah. And then he's driving along in the car and one of these songs comes on the car radio.
Yeah.
He gets moved because he's now in this new space.
That's right.
And then he goes straight to his daughter's place, which admittedly is just across the hallway from their apartment.
Yes,
they're all in
that's
these beautiful apartments
They are,
with these beautiful balconies in Rome with, the Castello San
Yes.
the Castle of Angels and the Vatican in the background and so on. It's gorgeous.
It's beautiful.
And he goes over and he embraces his daughter.
Yeah.
And then the son-in-law comes over and is kind of edging in. He's that's not what he intended, but then he does this shift. You can see it. And then he embraces him as part as well. And the son-in-law nuzzles in because all he's wanted was approval from this guy.
Yeah.
It's a really lovely mix of funny things that happen.
Yes.
But also, about emotional depth and warmth and humanness. And you're right, I hadn't occurred to me that this film is also about that you don't have to agree with people.
You don't, yeah.
To be warm and generous and human with them. Mm-hmm. I have a bit of a problem with this film, though.
Oh.
And it was on the second viewing, not the first viewing.
Okay.
Which is, now we want to be careful here. But
I do want to be careful because there's
an event that happens.
There is an event that happens. I don't want to sort of go into it, but it's a beautiful moment there. I'll put it this way. I had to Google afterwards a few things to see what the director came up with there or what he talked about the end. But I just...
No, not the end.
No.
What leads to the end.
Okay.
There is an event.
Yes,
that event. We're not going to say what the event is.
Not going to say what the event is.
That is quite sudden and shocking.
Yeah.
And when I first saw it, I'm pretty sure I saw it in a cinema, I got the biggest shock. And this event happens on the big screen. You think you're in a nice moment and then something happens. Let's just say that much.
Well, absolutely.
Yep.
We myself and Ninian just...
Yes.
Yeah.
And so when I watched it the second time, I knew, it took me a moment, but I knew we were heading to that moment. And so I was prepared for it. So I didn't have the same emotional shock that I think you absolutely have the first time you watch it. But then it kind of bothered me, like, what, and we're not going to be able to say too much about it here and now because we don't want to spoil the story, but it really bothered me about the final shot. I agree. That's one of the things I really remembered from the movie involving a tree.
Yes.
I think that's a beautiful moment, and it is a beautiful moment. It's deliberately ambiguous.
Yeah, it is, but why didn't you... What problem do you have with that?
The problem I have is, why was that part of the story necessary? And again, we can't go too far into this.
I think it's absolutely necessary.
We might have to take
but it's the whole questioning about faith and what you believe in. We can't go into too much. But I think if people have watched this and then come back to listen to this, they'll understand what we're talking about.
Yeah, they know what we're talking about.
Yeah.
It was a really odd thing to happen in the story. It was out of tone.
I thought it was a fine ending. I didn't have any problem with that.
As I say, the final shot, just before the titles start rolling, because you get a bit of an extended shot, but that final shot is beautiful both in terms of cinematography and also in terms of meaning or ambiguity meaning. It's just the event, I don't know. It felt out of kilter with me.
So I'm eager. What are you going to give this one, Greg?
Do I have to say it in English or Italian? Set there. Is that 7?
7.
I'm giving it a 7 out of 10. I think it's a genuinely moving comedy about people who are encountering gentle change, and it takes them into that deeper appreciation of the people around them. So I think there's a lot here to really relish.
Oh, I agree.
It's got that really unbelievable balance of being funny and having something to say about humanity.
Yeah.
It's just that last sequence, that particular event that brought me down to what I thought initially I might give it based on my last viewing. What about you?
I'm giving it a 7 too.
Is that 72?
72. I'm giving it a 72 out of 10. No, but I'm giving it a 7 out of 10.
Yep.
Now, look, I was getting close to an 8, but I think it's best it could be. It's not a classic, but it's such an enjoyable film. Like, it really is an enjoyable film. It's paced beautifully. Music's got energy to it.
You were saying it was a smash hit in Italy?
It was a smash hit in Italy. It was a number 1 smash hit in Italy. Like, it's a really good film. So please, if you see it, just watch it. You'll really enjoy yourself with this movie. I really do. It's a fun watch.
I totally agree. And before I watched it the second time, I was thinking I might give it an 8 or maybe even like nudge towards 8.5 because I remember enjoying it so much the first time.
That's right.
Second viewing, I'm just not so sure.
Yeah, but look, it's really
it's not the
good one.
execution; it's the story.
So the next film we're going to discuss is 1994's Il Postino, The Postman. Greg, tell us about it.
This story has so far been told 5 times. It was originally a 1983 Chilean film, Ardiente Paciencia. I'm going from Spanish, turning to Spanish now, or in English, thank God, Burning Patience.
I can't wait to hear this.
You what?
I can't wait to hear this.
I'm sure our audience can. Written and directed by Antonio Scametta. Sadly, it's a forgotten yet memorable film which I was fortunate to see at the time. In 1985, Scametta turned his film into a novel, which I've also read because I enjoyed the film so much. And then this novel was then filmed as Il Postino in 1994, with its setting moved from Chile's Isla Negra to an island in the Gulf of Naples. And then this 1994 film in turn became an opera in 2010. And most recently, Ardiente Paciencia, I hope, has become Netflix's first Chilean-made film, returning it to its original setting of Isla Negra. Wherever it's set, this is the story of Mario, played by Massimo Troisi, an island local who doesn't want to follow in his father's footsteps to become a fisherman. Fortunately, a job opens up at the local post office to deliver letters to just the one inhabitant, world-renowned communist poet Pablo Neruda, who has been exiled from Chile for political reasons. The real-life poet is played here by French actor Philippe Noiret, who you may remember as the projectionist in Cinema Paradiso, which we reviewed way back in episode 10 of season 1.
Long time ago.
I know. Memories. At first, Mario struggles to gain the attention of the famed poet. But gradually, as his fresh-faced enthusiasm and awe for poetry reveals itself, the two men form a friendship. Then Mario falls in love with local beauty, Beatrice Maria Grazia Cucinotta, which must be one of the most Italian names I've ever heard. It's fantastic. Who is immune to Mario's charms. So Mario seeks Neruda's help to seduce Beatrice through poetry and metaphors. While her formidable Aunt Rosa, Linda Moretti, frets and tries to block his attempts out of concern for Beatrice's morals and politics. This is a lovely story of a developing friendship between the two men, and then of the developing romance between Mario and Beatrice, all filmed to take full advantage of the island's landscape and people. It's beautiful to watch, and the camera revels in sensuality. It's particularly fascinated with Beatrice's breasts, what she does with a table soccer ball, and one of the great cinematic kisses between Mario and Beatrice. Whether you like it will depend on your tolerance for its quietly slow and gentle pace, reflecting, I suspect, the pace of the island itself. I have to say that I prefer the original 1983 film, not least due to a whimsical scene where the portly poet sedately dances to what he calls the new hymn of the International Union of Postal Workers, Mr. Postman by the Beatles, while the postman himself watches in wide-eyed wonder. The story's ending varies across the different versions of Scametta's tale. The recent Netflix version is a chocolate box romance bastardisation that I had to give up on. Other versions are darker, and in this sense, this 1994 version follows the playbook of all three of our Italian films today. Massimo Troisi was a popular Italian actor and filmmaker who purchased the film rights to Scametta's novel, and then wrote a script treatment for director Michael Bradford. Together, they and others rewrote the script to move the story back from 1969 Chile to 1950s Italy. Despite a history of heart troubles with an attack at the beginning of filming, Troisi pushed through to die at the end of filming. He was literally the heart of this film, which he never got to see, adding a poignancy to its viewing. And the film is dedicated to our friend Massimo. It went on to be Oscar nominated for Best Picture, Leading Actor, Director and Adapted Screenplay, and won for Original Dramatic Score.
Cosa ne pensi di questo film? Riccardo, ti ha ispirato a diventare un postino?
I think this is such a beautiful film. And yes, it does have a slower pace to it. Mario Rodolfo is such a simple character, you know,
Yep,
and so
yep.
and they live a simple life, and so this story is told quite simply.
It's telling, you know, the medium is the message, if you like.
Absolutely, it's beautifully photographed. The music is gorgeous, the performances are lovely, and their relationship is
Between the two men
is just wonderful. And there's so many lovely subtle moments in here, which you just, you know, it's hard to describe unless you watch these little moments between them.
You can see why this was an audience favourite. I mean, this and Life is Beautiful, which we're talking about next, they were big, you know, foreign film darlings of the 90s.
That's right, they were.
And at the Oscars as well.
Yeah, they were. But his learning of poetry and the teachings of Pablo Neruda and the love story between, I mean, he falls head over heels for Beatrice pretty quickly.
Oh, yes.
Right? Very quickly.
One thing that was really interesting is she doesn't come into the film for the first half hour.
She doesn't.
And it's only about an hour and 3/4 or so.
Yeah. And then she starts to fall in love with his poetry, obviously.
Yeah, but when they first meet, their first whole interaction is wordless.
It is.
Yes, and which I thought was really quite ironic, given it's all about language and poetry. It's when he starts giving her poems that she opens up to him.
That's right. And I love the auntie who is
Rosa.
very protective of Beatrice.
She goes to the priest.
she does.
And I watched a little bit of the director's, you know, narration on the DVD, and he said he really feels they cast the priest well, because they went for a younger kind of priest rather than an older priest, and that actor had only ever played policeman, and he just really. Yeah, he was great in the role. It's not a very big role, but the interaction where Aunt Rosa goes to see him and says, you know, he's writing these poems, you know, like it's poetry is this great moral danger.
That's right. I had no idea that Massimo passed away.
Oh, I'm sorry.
right? I didn't know that while watching the film or anything like that. So and that actually makes me feel sad about the actor because he did such a wonderful performance.
And I think he was better known as a comic actor.
Right.
Like he and Roberto Benigni, who we're talking about next, they were in a comedy film together. Some years prior. So I think he was more known as a comic actor, and then he does this thing that has little nuances of comedy, but it's a straight performance.
I'll tell you something though. Every time I watch a film like this, and these Italian films, I just feel like I'm at home when I'm watching them. And his character, I could see that character it was set in 1953, right? My family came over in 1952. My great-grandfather was the mayor of Condizione in Italy.
Is that near Naples?
2 hours east of Rome, in the Abruzzo Mountains.
So overnight delivery.
Right. So, I mean, it's not far, but it's not
It's that
southern.
part of the world.
It's eastern and sort of in the middle, but still, I can just see my family there.
Yeah.
And it's just, and I don't know, it brings me closer to the film as well. Just seeing everybody surrounding those. I can just see
You'd seen
them.
it before, hadn't you?
Yeah, but a long time ago.
Yeah.
Right, so I'd forgotten a lot of it, quite honestly. So part of me was watching it for the first time, and I love it. I think it's really lovely.
It's overwritten a bit. I'd seen it all those years ago as well, and it's overwritten a bit in my memory by the original Chilean one because I really liked that. It was just one of these films. It was in Melbourne. It was on at the State Film Theatre. I must have read a review or something, went to see it, and just really liked it. And so even I will have no trouble remembering the difference from this Netflix one, which I think is close to an abomination. Neruda is almost a backseat character.
Oh, really?
It's a romance story, and it ends when they get married, and there's more to the story than that. And the story varies. It's quite interesting. And again, I don't want to say in what ways, but where the story goes at the end in the latter parts of the Chilean film versus the Italian one is really quite different.
Right.
So I like both, but I
there's things we can't say.
I know. Well, it's going to be true the next one as well.
Yes.
But and it's always the same thing for some reason. Yeah, those Italians. But oops, where'd you say you were from again? So I had to watch it again to remember most of it because I think the other one is much stronger for me. But it's almost elegiac.
Yeah.
And it's interesting how that story has gone from, I think it's 1969 Chile, on a very remote, almost kind of peasant-like, I think, island, to pushing the story back about 15, 20 years to a similar kind of culture, but a different part of the world, and the story still works. They just have to pick up the Chilean poet and drop him in Italy.
Yeah, but I mean, it was hard times in Italy at that time.
But I think he actually
post-World War II.
I think he was there, but I'm not sure if he was in exile at that stage, which is a key part of the story.
Philip Noire is a wonderful actor.
Oh yes.
We haven't talked about him much here, but he's got such a presence on screen.
Well, when he comes back to the bar the last time,
yes,
that whole sequence, he never says a word.
I was emotional.
He doesn't. He says nothing.
No, he doesn't.
It's all in his face.
It is.
Yeah.
And I got emotional at those moments.
He was one of the first French actors I became aware of because I did French at school. And we, studied a few French films. I'm talking back in the 70s. And he was the star of the film. Yeah, shut up. This film was made before you were born, in fact, if I'm right. But it's called L'Horloger de Saint Paul. That's one accent I can kind of do.
Nice.
Which is the clockmaker of Saint Paul, a village.
Yes.
And he played the clockmaker who was, just a small town, older guy whose son got involved in political activism. And I think, from memory, he died, and the story is about a policeman who came to give him the bad news and how those two men formed a relationship. So I first became aware of him when he probably was maybe either side of 40, maybe.
Yeah.
And seen a few things along the way. I've never actually seen Le Grand Bouffe, have you? He's in that.
No.
Which is quite a famous film about...
It is, I've heard of it.
Gluttony, basically.
Yeah.
But, he was so brilliant in Cinema Paradiso. And he's
standout.
So very good here again. I think I like him a bit more in Paradiso, but it's, it's quibble kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I really like about Troy's performance is it's just very unaffected.
Yeah.
You could have taken that part and maybe even hammed it up a bit or over dramatized it. He's just got a very light
very
touch.
understated. Yeah, it is. And again, he's a simple man.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's a moments there when Naruto is out of exile and he hasn't written to him, or when he does write to him, he's not really doesn't mention him at all in those sorts of things. But he's saying, well, why would he want to do that? Why would he want to do that? And he's trying to justify that why he wouldn't communicate with him. And it's sad and beautiful at the same time.
And then there's a lovely sequence where he goes around recording the sounds of the island.
Oh, beautiful sequence,
The wind in the trees, the waves on the shore.
Waves on the shore.
The heartbeat of his unborn child.
Oh, beautiful. Oh, tingles.
Yeah.
Tingles.
I have to say, there were a couple of shots that were a bit clumsy, I thought. There were, I think, 2 occasions. I can think of one of them now.
I didn't notice any clumsy shots.
No, where the camera work, it was purely the camera work, was just that little bit clumsy. And one of them was outside Naruto's house. Well, I just thought, I don't think this is trying to say something. It just feels like maybe it was a result of the fact that Choicy died. They couldn't go back and do other shots because at least one, if not both of the shots, he was part of that sequence. So I'm a bit curious about that. But again, these are quibbles. It is really a very good film. What are you giving it?
I'm giving it an 8 out of 10.
So am I.
Oh, we're snapping tonight.
Well, say that in Italian.
No. It's not begin at that.
Okay.
That's bad.
This is all made up. You're actually like, 6 generations Australian, right? Anglo-Australian. Ricardo. Your name's probably just Richard or something anyway. Anyway, so yeah, look, 8 out of 10. Lovely performances. It's beautiful to look at. I think for some people it could come across as slow. So you need to be a little bit patient. It's not a film to watch when you're tired.
No, definitely don't watch it when you're tired. But I think you just get into their relationship here, and it's a really lovely, lovely story.
Yeah, I agree. So, moving right along to our third Italian film, why don't you take us into it, Riccardo?
Released in 1997, Life is Beautiful, or La Vita è Bella, is a comedy-drama film directed by and starring Roberto Benigni, who co-wrote the film with Vincenzo Cerami. Set in Italy in 1939, Benigni plays Guido Orefici, a Jewish Italian who loves life and finds joy in almost everything. Moving into the city, he begins to work as a waiter for his uncle while trying to obtain funds to open his own bookshop. He consistently bumps into Dora, Benigni's real-life wife, Nicoletta Bracci, whom he instantly falls in love with. The trouble is, she's engaged to be married. She isn't sure about her straight-laced husband-to-be, however, seeing quite a boring future ahead. He and his friends talk positively about fascism, whereas she sees fun, adventure, and a happiness with Guido. In an extremely enjoyable sequence, Guido whisks Dora away, literally on a horse, and we move forward years ahead. They are married, with a son, and Guido has his bookshop. However, their beautiful life is turned upside down when during World War II, they are split apart and taken to separate concentration camps. Guido employs his imagination to shield his son from the horrors before them, tricking his son into thinking that the experience was all a game to obtain points to win a real-life tank. When his son begins to question his father, Guido holds firm and never wavers in trying to save his son's spirit from being crushed by the surrounding horrors. The film is such a moving and heartwarming story about the power of love, hope, and the human spirit. It's a film that will make you laugh and cry, and I think it will stay with you long after you've seen it. The acting is just superb. Roberto Benigni gives such a powerful performance as Guido, and Nicoletta Bracci is also just beautiful as Dora. The film is beautifully shot by the wonderful Tonino Dellicoli, who also shot classics such as Sergio Leone's Once Upon a Time in America, Roman Polanski's Bitter Moon, and Jean-Jacques Gounod's In the Name of the Rose. Benigni also directs the film masterfully. perfectly balancing the humour and the drama of the story. It's both heartwarming and heartbreaking. But the film's message is ultimately one of hope. It's a film that reminds us that even in the darkest of times, there's always hope for a better tomorrow. And it tells us to never stop dreaming, no matter how difficult the circumstances may be. There are just so many wonderful moments in the film. Like, I've seen it so many times, and I cry every time with such sadness and joy at the same time. And not many films can do that. Now, I know there are some detractors of the film who say that this film makes fun of the Holocaust, but I think that's just ridiculous to me. Anyone who thinks this is really missing the point of the entire film about a father protecting his son. To me, Life is Beautiful is just a timeless classic. Greg, what are your thoughts?
Well, you've just completely taken away permission to give my thoughts about it without being ridiculous.
Yeah.
Look, I'm not the biggest fan of this film. I'm sorry.
Oh, Greg.
And I wasn't looking forward to doing this. And when we started talking about doing Italian films, I didn't even think about this possibility.
This is a father-son story. You love father-son stories.
And you're right. You and I both love good father-son stories. And so if I'm not lapping it up, there'll be reasons for it.
Okay.
So, how do you do that in Italian? I'll just use my hands. Anyway, so I probably would never watch this again if you kind of hadn't made me do it for the purposes of this episode, because I really struggled when I first saw it at the movies in 1997. And I think a large part of the problem, and I went back and looked at the trailer on my DVD, I think a large part of the problem is the way it was billed at the time. It was billed as a comedy, and very little focus in the trailer on the concentration camp parts of the story, little glimpses, but it came across, as so often happens in some of these films, came across as being one kind of film when it's really a very different kind of film. So where the story went to, I was completely unprepared for and really had difficulty with. And I did feel that here was a comedy being made set in a concentration camp. Now,
hang on a minute.
Other people have done that.
Yeah, I know, but it's completely not that.
Well, I'm talking to you about my subjective experience.
But it's completely not that, though. God, there's such seriousness in that situation in the concentration camps. I don't think he's making fun of any of it. To me, it's so serious. But it's just what he's trying to do for his son in trying to make it seem like a game to try and protect him from it. To me, that is completely different to try and making fun of the Holocaust. I can't see that at all in the film.
So I'll say again, I'm talking to you about my subjective experience of this film.
Yeah, but honestly, quite honestly, I don't know how people can watch the film and feel that, because I don't see that in the slightest. I don't.
Well, that's what I saw first time around. So now let me move on to watching it this time around, because now I'm primed. I know where the story goes. I couldn't remember the exact ending of the film, but I knew in general terms where it went. So I could watch it with a bit more almost objectivity. Yeah. It's not quite the right word, but without that kind of like, what? Oh, shit, what? Sorry, what am I watching? Because my wife and I went to see it when it came out, and I was looking forward to a nice light comedy, and it's not a nice light comedy.
No. I mean, look, the thing is,
so
you have to get his sense of life, and this is that's the whole beauty of the film, is that it starts out, you see that his charm, his zest for life and whatnot. You need to see that in order to see how he protects his son.
So his charm and his zest for life.
Yeah,
absolutely agree about the zest for life, but I think one of the determinants of whether you enjoy this film or not is whether you feel charmed by the first half. And by and large, I don't. Yeah, his style is not one, with exceptions, and I'm talking purely about the comedy part at the stage. I did laugh. I laughed out loud at the bit where he knocks the flower pot off the balcony onto the head of this guy who turns out to be Dora's fiancé.
Oh, it's very commedia dell'arte.
It is. And Benigni talks about his three influences being Chaplin, Keaton, and Peter Sellers.
Oh, you can see
You can absolutely see, at least, I'm not sure about Peter Sellers, but you can absolutely see Chaplin and Keaton in what he's doing. And so there were some parts that I thought were funny. The other parts, when he was trying to be funny, charming, didn't work so well for me, but there were moments that were just beautiful. The transition from when he's courting Dora and then when they're married is done so beautifully.
So well.
In terms of, moving in and out of this particular kind of room.
Agree.
And it's also helped that the child who plays their son is one of those beautiful cinematic children, just like the boy in Cinema Paradiso.
Yes.
Like, he's so well cast.
He's so cute.
He carries it off in terms of the charm and the pathos.
They use the same actor in Gladiator.
I heard that, but I don't remember him from that film
Don't
at all.
you?
Is he Russell Crowe's son, is he?
Yes. Yes.
He's not having a good run with fathers, is he?
I know.
But the moment that I loved is when he finds out she's going to see Tales of Hoffmann at the opera by Offenbach.
A beautiful piece.
And
that is...
Well, it's a lovely piece of music.
Oh.
But I'm going to tell you about that piece of music in a moment as well, which is quite interesting that they chose that one, apart from its beauty, because the scene is you've got the two main characters coming into Venice on a stage gondolier.
That's right.
And they sing this beautiful, I don't know if contrapuntal is the right word, but this beautiful piece of music where the two voices really kind of mesh and move each other around really well. And meanwhile, he's sitting in the audience, gazing up at her in one of the balcony boxes, and he's got this belief that he can just make things happen through the power of the mind. And he's sitting there just completely ignoring the stage, looking up at her and going, turn and look at me, turn and look at me. And the intensity of him looking up at her in that moment, that actually was charming. It was this comic charming stuff that just didn't really get to me.
And then the lady looks at him.
And then the lady looks at him, first of all.
I can only hear out of this ear.
Yeah, so he explains that's why he's looking sideways. And then when she finally looks at him, Dora, and he says something like, my beautiful love, or whatever he says. And the woman, who's a bit of a stereotypical, heavy-set middle-aged woman, kind of starts to sparkle for him and so on. I mean, again, that was one of the moments that worked comically. And I'm not even quite sure what makes the distinction, but I would have liked to have seen more of that in the film. It was when he was... Sometimes I just felt he was trying a bit too hard, I'm sorry.
No, I didn't think that. I think he was trying too hard. I think there's some parts. I mean, when he's a waiter, he's very, very slapstick sort of.
You're obviously very formed by your past experience of commedia dell'arte as well, which I don't have, But so sometimes I kind of like, and in fact, a couple of times I felt like when I don't like watching Jerry Lewis or Peter Sellers, where I just think it's a bit too much. Anyway, but the performance you haven't mentioned, which is really fantastic, Horst Buchholz as Dr. Lessing.
Yes. Look, I didn't mention him, but he's
the scariest character in the film.
He really is. And so he is somebody who knows Guido.
He has a relationship with him as a customer. Loves doing little word puzzles with him.
Word puzzles, that's right. And so and we find out that he's one of the Nazi party.
Well, he's the doctor in the camp.
And while Guido's getting a checked up.
And so he does Guido a favour. So Guido thinks that he's on side with him.
That's right.
And then there comes this moment where he thinks he's going to do something marvellous for him, and he's only just obsessed with these word puzzles. And it gives you this really great moment.
The look of him.
Of just that blankness, that moral blankness.
Yes.
And that's how people could have been in those situations.
Both actors there are just wonderful, because the look of Benigni's face, realising...
Yes.
You've lost all that moral compass. And so you have no moral compass.
Yeah, so when Benigni is being an actor, I find a lot more there, and then having the comic touches. But as I say, some of that more...
When he winks at his son...
At the end, you mean?
At the end.
Yeah.
That gives me chills.
Yeah, I know. I'm not touched to the point where I feel it all teary, I have to say. I'm sorry.
In this whole film?
No.
Oh, my God. I sob.
Oh, except maybe in the opera scene.
No, there are so many moments that I sob in this film. I'm a bit of a... This one here gets me every time. When he's courting Dora and he takes her to from the theatre in the car, and they start walking around. There's a very Singing in the Rain.
I was just saying that it's very Singing in the Rain. Yeah,
that's right. And which is meant to be.
Well. Yeah.
But when he rolls out the red carpet for her, but when he talks to her and tells her how much he loves her, that's such a beautiful moment.
There are also very terrible moments in this film as well.
Oh, hang on. Terrible.
No, like bad terrible, not terribly done.
But terrible. Oh, yeah. Oh, yes, that's right.
Yep.
There are, yes.
So when the children are preparing for their shower, I mean, I know, at least to a surface degree, I know how the showers worked and how people were persuaded to go and just have a shower when in fact they were gas chambers. Never really thought about it in terms of children before. Yeah. And I don't remember that scene from the first time watching, but it certainly affected me.
Yeah.
Horror rather than tears, perhaps. When the women, after the showers, the other women were sorting through that huge pile of clothes, and knowing that they sorted through them to then, I think, give them to families of the Nazi officers or sell them, it was all...
Well, when the older uncle is separated from them, you know what's going to happen to him.
Yes, exactly.
And it's just heartbreaking. It really is. But
I've kind of seen those scenes in other programs.
Of course.
It was the children that really, oh my God, of course.
There was one moment which always gets me, and that's when he puts the Offenbach over the loudspeaker, and Dora
on the Victrola,
is listening there and knows, and then and she hears her husband and the son. And that to me, just magical moments there.
And another terrible moment was when, in the fog, he stumbles across, the physical reality of the final solution.
Oh, yeah.
Although that was a bit quick. It was very foggy, and you kind of got the sense of it. Maybe that's all they really wanted to do, I imagine. But I think it was probably enough.
I think it was enough, I do. And I think... In fact, on the big screen, I remember that being on the big screen, but shocking on the big screen.
Yeah.
Because it really, but on DVD or on television, it's less so, but it's enough. We know what that is, and it's and the look on his face in there is everything. So
I want to tell you what I learnt about the Offenbach piece.
Please.
From good old Google and Wikipedia, I think it was. So the piece of music is called Belle Nuit, ô Nuit d'amour, which is Beautiful Night, O Night of Love, often referred to as the Barcarolle, from Offenbach's final opera, in fact, which is The Tales of Hoffmann. And this is the beginning of a sequence in the opera, apparently, that is all set in Venice. And this piece of music is actually used to set a seductive and sinister tone for that whole act. And what Offenbach apparently is doing here is giving a very ethereal, beautiful piece of music and what has been described as creating, a mirage. But underneath it, there is actually a second musical level that descends into the abyss. Now, I'm reading. I'm not going to claim to be a musician.
Yeah.
But having read that piece of music then I think is an inspired choice because, first of all, it is insanely beautiful and really works in that sequence.
It's beautiful.
But also... Now what I'm understanding is it's a very lyrical thing, but it's actually saying there's bad stuff coming.
Yeah,
and
right.
as such, I think that's inspired.
Yeah, that's right.
So what are you going to give this?
I think 10 out of 10 for me. I think it's a perfect film. I can't see a flaw in it. I know other people can. Apparently Spielberg wasn't a fan either. Again, for the same reasons as we've said, of thinking it was making fun. I just think it missed the point there. But I'm giving it a 10. I honestly, I remember when I first saw it, I was blown away by it, and I'm still blown away by it every time I watch it. I just think it's a perfect. I can't see a flaw in it every time I watch it. I just think it's perfect.
Yeah, I gave it a 10 too. Look, I didn't. When I thought, I've got to watch this film, I thought I was probably going to come down somewhere about 5 or 6 because I really didn't like it the first time I saw it. But watching it, again, with the foreknowledge of the shape of the story, so I couldn't remember, as I said, I couldn't remember the end of the story, but I knew the general shape of the story. So I was more prepared for it. I was more open to it. I was more able to see resonances between the very distinct first and second halves. And I saw beauty there that I hadn't seen, I think, the first time around. But for me, it's 7.5.
Okay.
Yeah, I struggle with it. I thought I'd get a much lower score, but it's better than I remember. But I think you kind of need to be primed for what the story's going to be about.
Right.
It doesn't have the resonance for me that it has for you. And I think some of that's to do with the fact that I don't find the first half as charming as you do. But I see a lot more in it than I used to. The other thing I should note about this is that I cheated a bit here. Because I didn't like the film the first time around, I did not want to be distracted by reading lots of subtitles. I wanted to watch the film rather than kind of do that eye-flitting thing.
Oh, you watched the dub version?
I watched the dub version on my DVD. It's actually quite good. I'm pretty sure that was probably Benigni's voice and maybe Nicoletta's voice for the characters.
Does he do the voice?
I think he must have done because it sounded the same. I can't swear to
I've never watched a dubbed version of this film. Ever.
Maybe you should try.
No,
Maybe you only
can't.
get 7.5.
I can't. No.
Yeah, but you understand Italian. You can listen to it and get the general tenor of what's being said. I don't have that.
Yeah.
And I did the subtitles for the other two films.
I hope that you don't miss some of the subtlety in the performance from that.
Well, I wouldn't pick it up anyway.
Yeah.
Why would I?
Yeah.
Because I wouldn't be as attuned to the tonality of the characters' voices in Italian. And
hang on a minute. When he said in the waiter scene, when he's saying about the mushrooms, right? When he's talking about the mushrooms in the food, it's very funny in Italian. He's like fritte.
I was laughing
very funny.
I was laughing hysterically in Italian the first time I saw it.
No. But those bits are actually very funny in Italian.
But it's not funny to me in Italian.
No, it is the way he does. Don't do it. It's not the way I do it. It's the way he does it.
No. That's funny to you.
No, yeah, but
but I'm not really listening to the Italian.
Yes. Yeah,
I'm reading subtitles and watching faces, landscapes, camera angles, whatever.
Yeah,
and I'm having to flip between the two.
Well, I'm going to have to trial it because I've got the DVD, but I've never thought about looking at a dubbed version of it.
I seriously, I would not ordinarily because dubbed experiences are often pretty bad.
Yeah, so
I'd much rather watch a foreign language film, in fact, with subtitles. But as I say, this time around, because I hadn't liked it and I wanted to be more open to this time around. That's why I turned off what would have been a distraction for me.
That's interesting. Okay. So that concludes our Let's Get Italian or Let's Be Italian
for some of us
episode. Next time, Greg, can you which will be our finale for season 5.
And we like to just stretch the bounds a little bit in our own little way for our episode 10s. So this is one I've been looking forward to, in fact, all season.
Yeah.
And calling it the Wheel of Cinematic Fortune. We've got here one of those little kind of spinning wheels that you get at old Fates or Bazaars, or on game shows where you spin the wheel and it comes up with something, and very cleverly put these kind of bear-shaped post-it notes all the way around. I borrowed this from my son who's safely overseas at the moment, and I think I put bears there because I could barely believe we're doing this. So each of these 10 segments of the wheel has got a teddy bear kind of post-it note, and it's got 2 things written on it, different genres of film. So we've got, I'll go around the wheel for this one, adventure and action, horror, sci-fi and fantasy, comedy, crime, mystery and thriller, romance and rom-com, war, western, musical, and kids and family. And on one layer of the wheel, on the other layer, we've got all the decades from the 1920s onwards. And so we're going to spin it 6 times. So the first time we spin it, it's going to give us a genre of film.
Yeah.
Second time we spin it, it's going to give us a decade. And that will give us the first film we're going to review next time in our Wheel of Cinematic Fortune.
Which we'll have to still choose.
Yeah, we won't do it here and now.
That's right.
Because we don't want to fight that much on the podcast.
That's right. But what you'll know is what genre it will
and
be
we will
and
reveal
the
it,
year.
And we'll reveal it progressively in episode 10.
That's right.
Film by film. So are we ready? Let's just hope this thing actually stays together.
Okay, let's go. Let's go.
The first genre.
The first genre.
Roll the wheel, Greg.
Roll the wheel. Okay, so the first genre we've got is a comedy.
Okay, comedy. Let's go for the decade.
Let's go for the decade. So we're going to be doing a comedy from the 1990s.
Oh, okay. It's interesting. It's probably going to be all crass and sex or something, but that's fine. Okay, going to our second genre.
The second film, second genre. Okay, we're going to be doing a kids and family genre.
Okay, from which decade? We're about to find out.
From the 1990s.
If the third one's 1990s, I'm going to reimagine all this. Third genre.
Go for it. Third genre, we've got a romance and rom-com.
All right, this is nowhere near as exciting as I was hoping. Okay, last one. Last decade. What is it?
Yes, go for it. From the 2000s.
Oh, come on.
Yes. The wheel doesn't lie, Greg.
I was really hoping one of those categories would give us The Princess Bride, which is 1987. Missed it by that
he's
much.
so disappointed. The wheel has not been happy to Greg.
I was hoping we get at least something a bit vintage.
But we do vintage.
No, but vintage means before my lifetime. Not,
Yes, but
not,
we
not
do
before.
vintage. But we do vintage. But we've got two 1990s and a 2000s. We'll work it out.
What was the point of writing out all those bloody post-it notes? All right, look.
He's got.
This might become the Wheel of Cinematic Misfortune at this rate. But okay. The wheel
I'm
has
excited.
spoken.
Come on, I'm excited.
I can see that.
I'm excited by what we can find.
I think next time we're going to play Spin Greg's Brain and I'll just decide what they are. Oh, I think this might be 1930s.
So that's great. So we'll look forward to episode 10.
Yes, won't we just?
So thanks for listening, one and all.
And arrivederci. You'll say it better.
Arrivederci.